Marth is a strange case in the world of Super Smash Bros. Melee. A character widely considered top 5 throughout the lifetime of the game, he's a character that has always had representation in the top levels of the game, and yet has always had some big issues. Marth has been a character plagued by the weird low tiers and even the other top tiers. So if this character is so good, why is it that he seems to struggle so much? Well, you see, Marth in Melee is actually an extremely matchup based character. For the most popular character in the game, Fox, you have to play a heavy grab-based combo game, whereas against Jigglypuff you need to play a more slow-paced, neutral, and very specific kill confirms where one missed grab can spell death. This caused Marth to not be considered worth the hassle of learning these niche matchups at the top level, and ended up just being a spacey killer tool for a decade. It would take a player who was inspired by the Smash Bros. Documentary, watching the likes of Ken and M2K do their thing, to be inspired to take solo Marth all the way.
Real high.
Oh, that's gonna be it! Zain! And Zain takes Genesis 7 Toph!
Zain Nagami is the current best player in the world, and started playing in just 2014, just a year after the influx of players from the documentary and EVO 2013. His rise has been astronomical, at the speed most people can only dream of. However, his come up started a little differently to most Marth players. When people think of unranked Marth player and an upset, the first thought that comes into your head is, what spacey player did they beat? It's just a classic of our time. A great spacey player gets caught off guard, and a Marth whose punish game is just on that day. However, Zain was different. You might think that his first big win was on Leffen at Smash and Splash, where he single-handedly made Marth Fox 60-40. And while that certainly put him on the map at the time, his first big upset at a major would actually be 2 years before that, and came from the most unlikely of places. At the Big House 6, Zain would play a small-time Sheik player you might have heard of, called Plup. Zain wouldn't just upset Plup, he would 2-0 him, and watching back from the VODs, it looked damn confident as well. You can tell that this wasn't an accident. Zain had studied this matchup, and found ways to break through Plup and the Sheik to start his career. It would take another 2 years before that big Leffen upset, and Zain's burst onto the Melee scene. But while the Leffen win was big, many saw it as the classic Marth Fox upset. After all, Zain would drop out of the event at 13th, while Leffen would go on a run all the way to 2nd. What Zain would do to cement himself as a player not to be trifled with would come a few months after that, at Smash Summit 6. No, not that one. Where he would upset Mango in a Game 5 set. Another spacey. However, what people really didn't expect was what would come next. 2 years in the making, Zain would play Plup in winners semis, where no one would expect him to win. I mean, I remember a friend telling me that there was no hope for this guy versus Plup. He was done, dust, extinct, and yet we would see another Zain victory. He had a huge breakout in what no one would expect from someone playing Marth, once again overcoming that Sheik wall. While Plup would go on to have a long win streak against Zain after this, no one really knew at the time that Zain's breakout onto the scene set the tone for his climb to come. Because now let's look at Zain's first big obstacle, the captain himself. Captain Falcon had long been considered on the same level as Sheik in terms of problem matchups for Marth. Marth players at the time struggling versus the character, as shown in M2K's reluctance to even pick the character in favour of his Sheik. Zain himself was not exempt from this struggle. In his first 3 encounters with Wizzrobe, they all went to Game 5, but he really couldn't close out a single one. SJ would put an immediate stop to his Smash and Splash run after his Leffen win, and continued to be a problem for him for the tournaments to come. In fact, through 2018, after his big performance, he would fall in multiple brackets to Falcon players. But yet, not once would we see a different character out of Zain. He stuck rigidly to his guns and improved his game, made adaptations, and in half a year was able to start beating these top Captain Falcons. And not just beat, it was almost like a switch flips once Zain gets that win and cracks the matchup open. Now, he's the favourite. You can see these big shifts in their head-to-heads after that first win. He adapts and he overcomes. But Falcon was an obstacle that always seemed doable. Marth had done it in the past, and what really set Zain apart from his contemporaries was the next 2 characters and their players that he would need to beat if he wanted to catch them all. Back in 2018, Hungrybox was at the top of his game, and in his second run to #1 in the world. Not only that, his reputation versus Marth is exceptional. He simply did not lose to Marth. So much so that people would incessantly talk about that one time PewPew beat him at Apex over and over again, because it was just such a standout event.
One of those matchups where, like, on paper, Marth wins, but when you watch the matchup, Marth be struggling. Yeah. Pretty hard.
Zain would feel this force firsthand when up against HBox, with him snuffing out any potential runs Zain might have had. And unlike Zain's other matchups, these didn't look close. 3-0, 3-0, 3-0. Would Zain need to pick up another character? Were Marth's weaknesses in the matchup just too much to handle? Well, if I've established anything thus far, that isn't the case. See, what was special about the PewPew set at Apex is that he used a technique called pivot tipper to pull out his win on HBox. This tech allowed him to confirm kills on Puff after a grab, erasing a bit of the struggles in the matchup that Marth had finding kills. It was at Super Smash Con where we would really see this take effect. And while at times it looked shaky, Zain would utilise pivot tipper, as well as an untrue chain grab that just seemed to somehow work to erase some of HBox's stocks. Not only that, Zain had also done something smaller to mitigate a big weakness for Marth, his grab. You see, when Marth tries to grab a crouching Jigglypuff, it just goes straight over her head, which Puff can then punish with her one-hit kill move, Rest. Zain got around this by not going for the much better frame-wise jump cancel grab, but instead using Marth's dash grab, which, while worse in terms of lag, will grab Puff while she's crouching. This just shows how Zain split himself from the pack of other Marths. He was willing to make these complete shifts in muscle memory in order to beat down a matchup wall, unlike any other player. And while he wouldn't win the SmashCon set, just one tournament later, Zain would double eliminate HBox to win his first major in Shine 2018. But that wasn't the end for HBox. He came flying back for round 2, of close sets and wins. But as time went on, we looked towards the modern day, and Zain makes HBox look lost in that matchup. Now we look at Puff Marth differently, all cause of the progress that Zain has made in that matchup. While this shows just how strong Zain is at adapting to matchups, against the next Pokemon, he would show just how committed he is to Marth and his grit to fight through. Axe is a legend of Melee, playing an unlikely character. People have always talked about how much Marth struggles against Pikachu, and a lot of that is solely thanks to Axe and his dominance in the matchup. If HBox was a raid boss, Axe was an insurmountable god in the matchup, boasting a 100% win rate against Marth since 2013. Axe knew just how to take apart Marth, and no matter how good Zain got, Axe would be there to tear him down. Axe would first play Zain in 2018 at Gommel, where it would go 3-1. Next, Summit 7, 3-1. Genesis 6, 3-2. Now, you might be inclined to believe that Zain was getting closer, but 3 years later, and Zain had had 8 more sets to try to beat Axe. It has come damn close, but none of them have been successful. Axe just clutches him out every single time. Through 2020, Zain would start to take his place as #1 in the world, but even then, Axe would beat him, even when he was underperforming online. It felt like a wall that just couldn't be toppled. Any other top player in the world might have looked for a new character with a better matchup against the Yellow Mouse, Ice Climbers, Sheik. But whether it was stubbornness or pride, Zain stuck it out. And in 2022, after nearly a decade of Axe never losing to Marth, Zain would try for the first time out offline after his ascent, and it would go all the way to Game 5. Then, Zain would take it. After literally 4 years, Zain finally topples the insurmountable god of that matchup. I can't even tell you what he changed. I'm sure these two are on another level in that matchup, to the point where I would be afraid to just tell you things that are just straight wrong. However, what is evident is his perseverance and willingness to try again and again to get it right with his character. At Shine, Zain even flew out another top Pikachu to practice against, just for Axe, and spent hours grinding on his stream. Since his ascent in Melee, Zain has shown that he's not one to give up. And that's why, even though in the modern day Sheik is still giving him trouble with the new obstacle in jmook, and you have people talking about what character he should pick up on Reddit, I don't think that history shows that that's what he'll do. Zain seems determined to prove that he is just the best Marth to ever do it, against all inconsistencies. And no matter the changes he needs to make, Zain has changed and continues to change how we think about Marth. And I don't think that that's gonna change anytime soon. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the story of how a player can change a character, then maybe you'll also enjoy this story of Sheik. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.